So first things first, Henry. Manchester United have signed two young players in Joshua Zirkzee at 23 years old and Lenny Yoro at 18 years of age as well before they head off on their pre-season tour to the United States. And it looks like Manchester United have changed their way of recruiting and not having to rely upon buying close Premier League talents for overpriced overpriced fees are crazy. My head is hurting just thinking about that Harry Maguire fee and all the other big fees we paid. Jadon Sancho for £73 million as well. Some of them, almost most of them, haven't worked out to what Manchester United fans and even just general football fans have expected. But have you seen anything new in this regime of Ineos and the start of Omar Barada, the start of Dan Ashworth at Manchester United that you think, you know what, there has been a slight change that we can kind of analyze a bit further as well?
Well, there is a definite change. Manchester United have a structure. I'm a huge Dan Ashworth fan. Omar Barada, the work he did at Manchester City, highly regarded. I think that was a clever appointment. You got Jason Wilcox and Christopher Vivell sort of underneath them as technical director and interim director of recruitment. And there does absolutely seem to be a structure. Good football people. You know, Wilcox has won the title. You've got someone like Dan Ashworth, his experience in recruitment, Brighton, Newcastle, you know, highly regarded. But what I would say is just looking at their transfer strategy, it does seem to be running on twin tracks at the moment because, as you say, they've gone for two young players, not necessarily familiar or having worked with Ten Hag. And Euro certainly from I think he had 45 minutes in one of the pre-season games. Apparently, he was outstanding, and he's got a lovely switch on him as well as the defensive qualities.
Yeah, there was
So
a slide tackle, a last ditch slide tackle when the Rangers striker was through on goal, and then that made the rounds on social media, and everyone's like, "Oh yeah, it's great. He can do an Aaron Wan-Bissaka style tackle when he hooks his leg round the
yeah,
attacker and stop him." And everyone was getting quite happy about it. But with pre-season, it is very dramatic to see the change from pre-season to the first game of the Premier League season as well. So there's lots to be excited about. But I've learnt my lesson, Henry. I'm keeping calm during pre-season from a Man United perspective.
yeah, I can remember when Yap Stam came over to great fanfare and he was ripped apart by Anelka in the Community Shield. And I can remember there was a piece in the Guardian which said Manchester United, Sir Alex Ferguson has just spent £10 million on a Dutch hat stand.
Mm.
So you can't immediately judge. And obviously, Yap Stam then went on to become a legend at Manchester United. But where I'm trying to sort of juggle things here, this twin track thing. So you've got the structure in place. You are looking for young, hungry players. And then you are also seeing Manchester United associated with two players that Bayern Munich don't seem to want in terms of the right back, Masri, and Matthias de Ligt. And obviously, Ten Hag knows them well. De Ligt, I think, is the most games he's played for a coach is Ten Hag. And you think that I thought they were trying to break this sort of Ajax old boys link for Manchester United. You've had Anana, Martinez, Anthony. Anana is still, the jury's still out, but look, there's a good goalkeeper in there. We saw that in Inter Milan. Martinez, when he's injury free, he's an outstanding player. Anthony, the jury's definitely out on. So, you know, they've either played for him, they've played in Eredivisie, and there's also the agency, you know, the links with his agency that Ten Hag's associated with SEG. He says it's coincidence, but and I'm sure he's probably right, and his interest in the lit, you know, predates Manchester United. But I just think it's an interesting one there. So who is actually choosing the players? Is it Ten Hag or is it a sort of de facto transfer committee? And it doesn't seem clear at the moment. But look, if they're good players, and Euro certainly looks a decent buy. Very young, quite expensive, but definitely a talent. Um, then you know that maybe they can work together. But clearly there is a structure there now, which is important. The other thing they have to remember is two of their most important players, three of their most important players, if you include Garnacho, Kobe Mainu, and Marcus Rashford. I know he had a poor season. These are homegrown players, and Manchester United fans love the homegrown, and you know that heartbeat of the team. Was it going back to like 1927? There's been a representative or an old boy from the academy or the youth set up in Manchester United's matchday squad. That's a formidable statistic and one they should be rightly proud of. And
Nearly 100 years, which is incredible to think about.
it's crazy, that, isn't it? I mean, and good for them. And that's a reminder to other clubs and also to Ineos that, the transfer strategy is all very well, but make sure you develop your own.
Yeah, exactly. Because there's been some not so big sales, but we've had the likes of Mason Greenwood, Donny van der Beek, Willy Kambwala being sold as well, and two of them were homegrown talents. And when you're looking at who you've got coming through, you've got the likes of Toby Collier, who was signed from Brighton a couple seasons ago. There's going to be a couple of young players called Max Oyedele, who's also a midfielder looking to come into the team. And there's going to be a few more defenders. You got Will Fish, I believe, is a young defender looking to get into centre back as well. But there will be some more players that Manchester United will look to sign. It's just about if we can sign them. But it goes to show that the rebuild is better than what we've seen previously under previous ownership as well, and under previous guidance from the likes of Ed Woodward, the likes of John Murtough, Richard Arnold. It's kind of been a tired. It's been a tiresome few years for Manchester United fans, but the main player I wanted to talk to you about was Jadon Sancho, Henry. You're looking at Jadon Sancho back into the team, starting two games in pre-season, playing 45 minutes against Rangers, I believe. And it's looking like they may want to keep him from an Ineos point of view, but we're not really completely sold on the whole, Ten Hag and Sancho made up, because that right wing, as we spoke about last time we met at Wembley Stadium, Henry, that right wing for Manchester United is a big conundrum because you've got Garnacho starting there, who predominantly likes to start on the left-hand side. Then we've got Facundo Pellistri, who used a term earlier. The jury's still out on Pellistri after having a good Copa America tournament. Amad Diallo, who's impressed at the latter end of last season. And Anthony, who hasn't really turned up. And then you've got Jadon Sancho. So you've got all these players trying to fit into one position. But where do you see Jadon Sancho at the end of the summer transfer window? Do you still see him staying in Manchester?
Well, Garnacho prefers the left, so
Yes.
there's an issue on that side with Rashford. Um, on the right, I mean, Sancho, I saw him in Rome against, was it Ukraine? He was absolutely outstanding in the Euros, the previous Euros.
Yeah.
So there's a formidable player in there. We've seen it with Borussia Dortmund, at Borussia Dortmund. There is a good player there. It's just a question of he hasn't really apologized. I'm sure there were one or two players there weren't impressed with his behavior, not only in those specific incidents, but sort of general, you have to respect timekeeping and meetings. He had one or two issues in his life, so there has to be sort of emotional support for him. But what are they going to get for him? 30 million? That's quite a loss they would be taking on him. So that is, that's a huge issue. But there's definitely a player in there, and if he can keep delivering, then absolutely he's worth keeping. But you know, I'm not so sure. I'm not completely convinced by Palestri. I like Ahmad Diallo. There's something about he looks a Manchester United player in terms of he's got that belief.
Yes.
You can see it with some United players, and I remember when he was playing for Sunderland in I think it was a playoff game at Luton Town a year or so ago. He was getting absolutely barracked to bits by the Luton fans. It was just relentless. It was almost bullying. And he was also getting a kicking from the Luton players as well, partly because I think he'd taken a tumble early in the game, partly something that happened up at Sunderland. And yet he just rose to it all. Okay, it's only championship, but I quite admired his character for coming through the fire like that. So don't rule Ahmed out.
Because with Amad Diallo as well, a lot of players, when they go on loan from big clubs, rather from Man United, Manchester City, Arsenal, Liverpool, whoever, and they go to the Championship, they feel a lot more Premier League ready. And I think that's just a natural progression where a lot of agents like to take their players abroad so they get bigger game experience, like at Borussia Dortmund, or if you're talking about, like, I don't know, somewhere in La Liga, for example, Valencia. I think Facundo Pellistri was at Almere last season. Correct me if I'm wrong. And when you've looked at Amad Diallo go out on loan to Sunderland, like you said, he feels a lot more game ready. He's got that can-do attitude of always being positive, playing on the front foot. He made a big impact, of course, against Liverpool in the FA Cup quarter-final at Old Trafford. But it's more so the fact that he didn't actually go to AFCON with the Ivory Coast. He actually stayed at Manchester United to train, to get under more experience and getting ready for the end of the last season as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see Amad Diallo start a bit more on the right hand side for Manchester United, because there's a lot going for the young players at Manchester United. Like you mentioned earlier, Kobbie Mainoo, Alejandro Garnacho, Rasmus Højlund still finding his feet at Old Trafford. And I reckon with the competition of Joshua Zirkzee, hopefully he'll be more match ready and fit than Anthony Martial was last season. There'll be a bit more rotation, a lot more competition for the striker. But with Amad Diallo, I think he's head and shoulders above Anthony, ahead of Pellistri. And only if Garnacho kind of starts, so that's his main competition for wingers. Because Sancho, I personally think he'll be gone by the end of the summer because there could be more money that we need to spend on a midfielder, maybe Zubimendi. Fofana got linked with us yesterday, the Monaco defensive midfielder. So it goes to show that maybe there are going to be some changes, but I wouldn't be too sad to see Sancho leave when you've got the likes of Amad Diallo looking to
Mm.
step up and get some more game time as well, which would be fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Sancho's days looked numbered. It'd just be nice to see him playing again and playing with a smile on his face again because he seemed to have the sort of weight of the world on his shoulders. He was disrespectful towards Ten Hag. That tweet was naive. But, you know, he's still young. He's got another 10 years left in him.